All right, we are rolling. I'm already getting heckling from the crowd here at the Wasilla campus. I won't name names, Wells, but we are ready to roll. I want to give you a couple of bits of information as we get started here. First thing is this. We have a number for you to text questions into. Connie Anderson, I see you watching live right now. I just heard from our Palmer campus. I think they have 18 or 20 over there. Willow's got people there. Talkeeton, I know at least Cody is there. And so here's the text number. It's going to be on the screen, but you can, my wife just came on. Hi, Kitchery. You can text questions to this number, 321 236 2747. 321-236-2747. Text your questions to that number, and then once we're wrapped up with the initial presentation this evening, we will then take those questions and I'll present them, and then I am certain we will get amazing answers to them. So tonight we're privileged to have Heath here with us, the Chief of Staff for Kathy Tilton, and then Kathy is in the house as well. Will be available for the Q&A piece here in a bit, but we're going to get rolling. Let me say a word of prayer, and then we're going to jump right in. Jesus, we want to say thank you. Thank you for the privilege of being able to gather in this way, live across multiple locations and in homes. We ask tonight, as we hear in a nonpartisan way about the voting opportunities we have in front of us, that we would be able to walk away informed, with our questions answered, and able to make a difference inside of the system that you've placed us in our government. And so we say thank you for the opportunity to be together in this way. We ask your blessing on this time, and we look forward to what you're going to do in the days ahead. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, would you welcome Heath to the platform? And Kath, okay.
All right. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for attending here tonight, for those that are here in person and those watching online. Every one of you are obviously leaders in the community because you're here tonight wanting to know more about this ballot measure 2 and ranked choice voting. And, voting is your right. And I want to make sure tonight that you just have a little bit of education. I will tell you up front, I did not vote for ballot measure 2. And I do not really care for ballot measure 2. And probably one of the first things we would look at doing is getting rid of ballot measure 2. It's very confusing for everyone. So our job here tonight, we are here on official status. So as Pastor Jonathan said, here in a nonpartisan way, just to give information that we have gained over watching several presentations. So I would just like to introduce Heath Hilliard. He is my Chief of Staff, and obviously very great with Mike. He is my Chief of Staff, and he is going to do the initial presentation. We do want to say thank you to the Division of Elections. The materials that we have tonight are from Division of Elections, although it's going to have our spin on it. So with that, here's Heath.
I think, mic working? All right. Thank you, Representative Tilton. Appreciate that. And when we get to the really difficult questions, we'll go ahead and defer those over to Representative McCabe. I know he'll be the domain expert on those. So, my name is Heath Hilliard. I'm Representative Tilton's Chief of Staff. I've been with her since her first term. I've done, I think, about nearly 20 years in the Alaska State Legislature as a staff member for various legislators, and now sort of the ranked choice voting, a ranked choice voting subject matter expert, kind of. We're going to walk through this. Before we get started with the presentation that I'm going to give, that's really based on the Division of Elections, we have a couple of short videos that will kind of at least initially explain some of the basics. The first video has to do with what we call the Pick One primary. Some of you, I think, have already actually voted and know what that looks like, but why don't we go ahead and cue that one up, and then there will be a subsequent one with regard to the actual ranked choice general. So why don't you go ahead and play those videos.
Alaskans will use ranked choice voting in general elections for federal and state races. Instead of choosing just one candidate, you fill in the oval in column 1 for the candidate you would most like to win. Then vote for your second choice in column 2, and so on. Ranking other candidates does not impact your first choice, but you don't have to rank them all. For your vote to count, you should mark only one oval in each row and one oval in each column. We take the ballots and count all the first choices. If a candidate gets at least half of the votes in round one, they win. If this doesn't happen, we continue to round two, and the candidate with the least first choice votes is eliminated. We count the voters' next remaining candidate choice instead of their choice for the eliminated candidate, meaning they still have a say in who wins. We repeat these steps in rounds until there are only two candidates left, and whoever has the most votes wins. That's how ranked choice voting works. Check out our website and follow us on social media to make sure you're ready to rank it up, Alaska.
So my apologies to the guys in the back. That was supposed to be second, but whatever. Play the first one for the.
The new nonpartisan top 4 primary election starts this August. Now all candidates are on the same ballot, and all voters will get the same ballot regardless of their political affiliation. And the governor and lieutenant governor will run as a team. Voters vote for one candidate in each race, and the top 4 vote getters from each race move on to the general election. The primary no longer determines the nominees of political parties. Visit elections.alaska.gov to learn more.
Great, thank you guys, appreciate that. Step into the presentation, again from Division of Elections. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the pick one primary because it's not that complicated. It's a difference from what we've been doing for about the last 30 years in Alaska, but let me just give you a little bit of background on Ballot Measure 2. It was originally called Alaska's Better Elections Initiative. I find that kind of be a dubious description for this mess, but and it should be noted that Ballot Measure 2 only passed statewide by less than 4,000 votes. There was a lot of confusion about what it actually did, and which is why I personally recommend people to not support ballot initiatives, but that's just a personal opinion. One of the things that has frequently been asked is why hasn't the legislature repealed it already? Well, according to Article 11, Section 6 of the Alaska State Constitution, the legislature can't repeal a ballot measure for 2 years after the effective date. The effective date of this measure was February 21, so it can't be repealed until February of 2023. So I would anticipate, with a couple of members of the House Minority Caucus sitting here, I think that can suffice it to say there's probably going to be a good push to move that along in 2023. But anyway, nonpartisan top 4 primary. This is a distinction from what we've been currently doing, because I think most of you know that we have a 2-ballot primary, or we had a 2-ballot primary before this election cycle. You had the Republican-only ballot, which Republicans, undeclared, and nonpartisan voters could select if they wanted to, and it only had Republican candidates on that ballot. And then you had the essentially everything else ballot, all other parties, nonpartisans, et cetera, and Republicans, undeclared, and nonpartisan voters could select either ballot. Now there's only one ballot, and and candidates from all parties will be on that ballot. It's important to note that previously parties had the ability to essentially limit ballot access based on a person's longevity with regard to the party and whatnot. According to Ballot Measure 2, or because of Ballot Measure 2, the only thing that's required for a partisan identification is that they be registered with that party the day they file for office. And so basically the filing deadline's already done, but doesn't mean that they have necessarily been a member of any given party for any length of time. It's at the time that they filed for office, they either changed their registration to reflect that, or they were already registered. So I would say for voters in general, don't just assume that because somebody has a party demarcation next to them that you can necessarily depend on them to follow the general party platform. So I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just saying don't necessarily just assume that. So again, as that noted, another major difference between the previous primaries and the current primary is that governor and lieutenant governor candidates must run together. It used to be that you had candidates for governor, candidates for lieutenant governor, and after the primary, then they would merge their campaigns together. Now they have to run as a team. You want to go? Yeah, all right, you've got So again, you can see State Senator A, you have all, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican. There can be a nonpartisan, et cetera. Again, so there's no distinction with the pick one primary under the new primary system. You'll vote for one person, that's key to note. Even though we have ranked choice in the general, it's not a ranked choice primary, it's a pick one primary. So you will only vote for one person. Now, I haven't asked about this specifically, but my understanding is if you were to fill out your ballot incorrectly and cast a vote for more than one person in that primary race, the voting machine, when you go to turn in your ballot, will actually give you an error message, and it will ask you, the division staff will ask you, do you want to reconsider your ballot? Do you want to spoil your ballot and take a new one and refill it out? Or do you want to cast it as is? And ultimately, if you choose to cast it as is, you can just know that if you have an overvote in a primary like this, that your vote won't be counted for that race. Now, if you do it in all races, then none of your votes will be counted, but nonetheless. So it's really, the primary is really not that complicated. It's just a change from the norm. And I think over my 3 decades in Alaska politics, I've heard as many people wanting either no primary or wanting an all-in-one jungle primary, as they call it, versus party primaries. So maybe for some of you, it's a benefit. Again, pick one primary is really not that controversial or complicated. It's really, we get into ranked choice voting, and which, there are a couple of notes here. Why don't you go ahead to the next slide. This is really changes for candidates. It really doesn't mean a lot to the average voter, but these are some distinctions that Division of Election noted between the previous system and the current ballot measure 2. No nominating petition process. There used to be a process where someone could petition themselves on by getting a certain number of voters in their district. That's gone. All general election candidates must participate in the primary unless they are a write-in specifically and only for the general. But it used to be, for instance, that if a candidate from one party that wasn't very strong dropped out, the party had a certain period of time, it doesn't matter which party, a party had a certain period of time in which to replace that candidate. That can no longer occur. If a candidate from a particular party withdraws, the party has no option to fill that for the general election. Also, again, going back to candidates can choose their political affiliation, and again, there's no essentially vetting by Division of Elections or the party apparatuses in specificity to say these are definitely a member of our party. It's were they registered with that party at the time they filed for election. And then, again, lastly, governor and lieutenant governor file together. Next slide. Now we get into the ranked choice voting. So before we get into some of the real specific details, I want to give you some generalities. And I will confess that at the time that it passed, I had some confusion about what it did and did not do. Like Representative Tilton, I did not vote for ballot measure 2. I do not like ballot measure 2. I think it is unnecessarily confusing. And so if I'm explaining things, understand I'm just explaining from a position of I want you to understand the mechanics, but I'm not advocating for anything particular. So I don't want, but one thing, if there are 4 candidates in the general election for a particular office, you are not obligated to vote for all 4. You're not obligated to vote for 3. In fact, you're not obligated to vote at all. There are a couple of things you are recommended to not do, but we spoke with Julie Hussman, who is the regional director for the Division of Elections here in the Mat-Su. Normally, she'd be the one doing this. She's not, because today is 2 weeks from the primary election, and as she said, she's a little busy. So, at the end of the day, know this, that voters' intent is what is primary and preeminent, meaning you can fill out your ballot however you want, and they will notify you if your ballot is filled out incorrectly. However, if you still choose to submit your ballot that way, you can. With regard to some things that they recommend you not do, but not that you can't. For instance, probably one of the most common one that we've heard of recently, or from some people that have actually voted already early voted in this primary, a number of people have voted, for instance, all horizontally, meaning they rank one candidate as 1, 2, 3, and 4. Again, not that you can't do that, it's that ranking that way doesn't particularly advantage your candidate or yourself as a voter. Whenever that candidate is eliminated from a round of voting, the additional votes don't mean anything. Now, that's not me suggesting you vote for and consider voting for somebody that you don't support. Just simply that voting in that fashion doesn't really do anything. Just if you want to vote for only one, vote for only one. Again, you'll get an error message saying that you've overvoted in that race. But again, you can simply choose that the poll worker will ask you, and there's a button on the machine, and you can say, cast or reject, and they'll give you the ballot back, and you can spoil it and do it again. Another thing that you really cannot do, it will absolutely invalidate any vote, is when you vote all vertically, when you rank all candidates as the same rank, 1, 2, 3, it doesn't matter. But if you rank all of the candidates for an office in the same way, that will invalidate your vote. That vote for that race would not be counted. Again, Division of Elections will ask you, hey, there's an error. You've overvoted. You voted incorrectly. You can choose to submit your ballot that way if you want to. But that's been one of the questions we've had before is, will I be notified if my ballot is filled out incorrectly? And the short answer is yes. You will be notified. And if you choose to submit your ballot that way, it will be under your own willful acknowledgement. One of the things that people have also asked with regard to ranking, well, maybe I want to rank 1. I don't have anyone that I feel confident enough to be 2, but I could probably bring myself to, rank 3 and 4. So I want to do 1, 3, and 4. Well, you can do that. Just know that 3 and 4, 3 becomes 2 and 4 becomes 3. So they just automatically rank up from the number 1. Also, if you do 2, 3, 4, it becomes 1, 2, 3, and so on. If you choose, for instance, to vote for 1 and 4, but not 2 or 3, know that only your number 1 vote will be counted, number 4 will not, and that's a function of the ballot initiative language. That has nothing to do with Division of Elections or their internal policies or regulations. That's a function of the ballot measure. Let's see, okay. So go to, I think the next, okay, go to the next one. There you go. These are the mistakes to avoid that I have just described. Again, you've got 1, 3, 4. You can do that, but 3 becomes 2 and 4 becomes 3. And then also the same So they're also, there's another on the top one. First choice, 2 second choices, and 1 third choice. Anything after number 1 will not be counted because that will be considered a skip, and you've ranked 1 candidate the same rank twice. And so only your number 1 in that circumstance, the top scenario, only the number 1 would be counted. Again, Senate B, the bottom one, as we described, you can certainly do that. There's no particular advantage to you or your candidate. If the candidate's number 1, they're number 1, meaning when the initial ballots are counted, they're number 1. Hey, great, your candidate's still in the mix. So it's not that you can't do it, it's just essentially unnecessary. Now, I do know that we've had some constituents who have asked us, well, they chose to do that because they were deeply concerned about somebody being able to break into the ballot box and find their ballot and fill in other ovals. Well, I will tell you from the presentation that we were given today from Julie Hessman at the Division of Elections, and actually being able to manually manipulate the machine and how the ballots were entered and how they're secured and so on and so forth, the odds of that being able to happen are statistically insignificant. It's virtually impossible. And by the way, also, I've heard this question before about Dominion machines and Dominion machines being connected to the internet and et cetera, et cetera. That's also not accurate. They are standalone scanners that are on top of a box that secures the ballots. There is no connection to anything other than the power plug-in. There's no connection to the internet. I'm not defending Dominion machines. I'm not saying they're good. I don't want to get into the debate about 2020 and whether it was stolen or so on. I can say just from the presentation we received today, the likelihood of that happening is extraordinarily low. I mean, in the tenths of percent, probably, maybe even less than that. So again, not defending Dominion voting machines, simply letting you know that they are secure. Okay. Now let's keep going to the next one. This gets into the rounds of voting. So, it's election night. All the ballots, all of the live in-person ballots they're counted essentially as soon as the polls close. We'll still have 2 weeks, actually 15 days, which the division has to wait for all of the absentee ballots to come in. They've got a 15-day time frame. And my understanding is the voting will be continual as those new absentee ballots come in. But it's election night, and you're sitting there waiting for your candidate. If your candidate has, at least theoretically, has 50% plus one on election night, they win. That's it. Now, a little complicated because, again, you got to wait for the absentee ballots to come in. But, for instance, if your candidate is far enough ahead and you know that there are only 1,000 outstanding ballots left, et cetera, you can do the math and sort of, as the divisional elections would say, call the race yourself. They won't call it until it's actually certified by the certifying board, the State Ballot Review Board. But if your candidate in the first round, 50% plus one, they win, race is over, we're done. It's when we have a plurality, particularly in the top four races. Now, I wanted to let you know with regard to the top four, it's really meaningful only for the 3 statewide races. And I want to be thoughtful because I know I've got Representative McCabe sitting here. And you still have 2 opponents, correct? Oh, only one? Oh, well, congratulations. Most of the legislative races, the top 4 really won't matter. There's only 1 race in the entire state where top 4 actually will matter in the primary, and that's a race up in Fairbanks, the new House District 35. I don't think there's any race in the Mat-Su where top 4 really means anything in a primary. So we get to election night now. Another candidate, so you've got maybe your candidate for governor. Hey, they're at 50% plus one on election night. They basically won the race. It's all good. Somewhere down the ballot, oh well, you've got kind of a neck and neck, a 40, a 30, and a 20. That math didn't add up, but you get my point. Now what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to wait for all of the ballots to come in. So they've already reviewed and they go, okay, the number one ballot, the number one vote rank, okay, hasn't provided a 50% plus one clear winner. Second round of voting, they will go through and review the ballots again, and they will review all of the second place. And then once those second place votes are counted and applied to the proper candidate, the number 3 person gets dropped. And at one point in time, we all believed that at any point in the rounds of voting, that once a candidate received 50% plus one, even if that was 3 candidates still in the race, that if someone got to 50% plus one, the race is over. Turns out that's actually not true. It can't occur. If the person doesn't win on the first round with all 4 candidates, then it can't be declared until it's 50% plus one between 2 candidates. And that's kind of an important distinction. I don't want to put on my conspiratorial hat, but there were kind of reasons for that. I should note that Alaska is only the 2nd state that has adopted ranked choice voting on a statewide basis. The other one is Maine, and in preparation for this, I had been using the information about Maine to say, oh, by the way, do you realize that ranked choice voting for Maine only applies to federal offices? And that's true in the general, but I did find out the state of Maine does a ranked choice primary for the state offices. But in the case of Maine, it's not top 4, it's top 2, where for state offices, the top 2 advance to the regular general. The reason Maine can't do a ranked choice general for state offices is because the state of Maine's constitution acknowledges the existence of plurality voting. And because there's clear language in the state of Maine's constitution acknowledging that races can be won by a plurality, that couldn't apply to a ranked choice general for state offices, only for federal offices. So, as I said, I think to Pastor Jonathan that the state of Alaska has actually become a gigantic laboratory for some interest groups around the country to see, how does this work? So I think a lot of questions. So, in short, don't ever think, so if you don't vote for a candidate, if you don't rank somebody number 2, you will not have a vote go to somebody that you did not intend to vote for. It's not like your ballot magically gets allocated somewhere else. If you only voted for one person, only one person gets the vote. And it's not in European proportional representation, which is a much more convoluted scheme. As the party, they'll drop off and they'll do it on a party basis. It's not that at all. Simply, they're going to go through. If there's not a 50% plus one clear majority on the first round, then they'll drop off the number 4, and then they'll go and count. They'll go and count the second place votes, and then the third place if necessary, to get one of the candidates over the line with a clear majority, a 50% plus one majority. Again, unnecessarily confusing. Everyone basically with me? I know I asked for to hold questions till the end, but if there are some concepts or any kind of terms that I'm using that are making it difficult for you, let me know. So go to the next slide. So again, this just also again outlines what I was just describing on election night. Only first choice results are counted. And again, if you're a candidate that you voted for gets to 50% plus one, again, there's the wait for the absentee ballots to come in. But basically, if your candidate's at 50% plus one on election night, they've won the race, there are no subsequent rounds of voting or ballot counting. Ongoing ballot counting, eligible absentee and question ballots open and scanned, but they will not be tabulated until all of the question ballots have been counted. So it's very likely, for instance, I can say this with some confidence that, for instance, in the gubernatorial election, without talking about my own personal preferences or anything, because, and I mention this because the governor has a constitutional obligation to put out a budget by December 15th. The bottom line is, it's very likely that we may not know who the governor is until at least November 23rd. It's got to be 15 days. And depending upon litigation that could result, it could be longer. So that's an unfortunate thing for Alaska, but that's also a function of this ballot measure. So I anticipate that if your candidate for whatever office has not won on election night, you won't know for 15 days or more. And again, that's ballot measure 2. That's not division of elections. That's not the legislature. That's what was passed by the voters. So that basically concludes the division of elections presentation. I hope it wasn't too convoluted. To help you guys, we're going to do a little exercise. So everyone with a smartphone, I'd encourage you to pull it out. And if you don't have a QR reader on your phone, download one really quick, because we're going to do a little mock election. Go ahead, Kathy.
Hey, Heath, you didn't address the write-ins. You want to address that? Or you want to wait till after the mock election?
Do I have to?
Yes.
So the question of write-ins, so just so you know, not everyone or every write-in is a qualified write-in. Believe it or not, I mean, you can write anybody in, but in order for a write-in to be counted, they have to be a certified write-in candidate with a division of elections. I don't think there's much to it, but if they're not certified with division of elections, it will be recorded that there was a write-in vote, but it won't be tabulated for the purposes of ranking. Yes, sir.
In the general, you have 3 days to file as a write-in candidate.
Correct. Or is it 5?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So, and that makes that individual a valid candidate.
Correct.
Anybody else is really not a valid candidate.
Correct. Yeah, yes, I mean, if somebody wants to write in Mickey Mouse, I mean, they can write in Mickey Mouse, but Mickey Mouse isn't a valid candidate. And I believe that there is a link on Division of Elections website with the certified write-in candidate list, at least for the upcoming primary. And obviously, they won't know who it could be because they've got 3 days up until the general election. All right. So, everyone got their phones scanned? This will take you to a virtual primary election. Pick one. And that's what you might face in the upcoming election.
Yeah, if you have an iPhone, you don't have to have a QR code with your camera.
Oh. Does that make me a boomer? Because I'm an Android guy?
You can let people know it's also on the screen online. They can scan it on your screen.
Oh, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, there's a QR code on your screen that you can scan from there to participate in this election if you would like. Again, this is just a mock election for illustrative purposes to help you understand. And I just got an error message, and I've heard this before, so. Did you get a bad request, Kevin? It went through? Yeah, I'm getting a bad request. I don't know why. Let's see here. There we go. Now I got it. And it will take you to a preliminary results screen. Feel free to go and check and see what we're looking like there. Interesting. What's interesting is this is the second time we've done this, and the person that did not advance the first time in a different audience did advance this time. Interesting. All right, so everyone, if you're done voting, there's, what does it look like? There's 36 votes cast, so I'm guessing a few people have participated. 43, okay. So now, let's go back, and now we're going to go to the ranked choice general. So can we get that one up? There we go. For folks watching at home, there's another QR code for the general election. Come on.
Just click on the yellow box that comes up.
What? Man, my general just doesn't want to come up on my phone. Sorry, it worked when I did a run through. Here we go. All right. And again, you can rank all four, or you don't have to. All right.
Forrest, do you know who Reagan is?
And in an overly lopsided election, something like equivalent to the 1980 election, Ronald Reagan wins with like 95% of the vote. But does the visualization on that results, does that help you understand the allocation of the votes?
So if you, like all the others, but not Obama, so if I don't put any rank for him, but I do the other three, is that okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Maybe I could just ask a couple of quick questions here that kind of will
Absolutely.
apply to this for everybody's sake. And just remember, we're broadcasting live to our other campuses, so I'll repeat your question when we get to Q&A. But if you can text the questions in, we'll ask them. But a couple things that I thought were interesting in a couple of questions we have. If there are 4 candidates, I can vote for only one, and my vote will still count.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Correct.
All right. And then just because they tell me there's an error message or the error message comes up, that does not mean that my vote doesn't count. I can actually say, go ahead and submit it.
Well, there's 2 parts to that question. Can you, as the voter, say, no, that's how I want to submit my ballot? You absolutely can. Does that mean that your vote will be counted in every race? It depends on the nature of the error.
Okay.
So if you rank all 4 candidates as number 1 or 2, if you rank them all the same, then your vote won't count because the machine cannot ascertain voter intent in that circumstance.
So if I ask at the poll, will my vote count as submitted, they will tell me yes or no.
They should. I mean, that's
Okay.
yes. I mean, they. Again, it depends on the nature of the error. For instance, if you did the all horizontal where you rank one candidate 1 through 4, you'll get an error. But you can go for whatever reason, like our constituent who said, "I'm concerned about people coming in, breaking into the machine," and then you absolutely can submit. There are things that you can do where it's considered overvoting for a candidate or suboptimal ballot that can still be counted, and they'll warn you. But then I think the one all vertical is the one where you can do it that way, but your vote won't be counted because the machine won't be able to make a determination.
That's sort of what I gathered is that the majority of error messages that will come up, your vote would actually still count. There are only 1 or 2 in which your vote actually
I think really yeah. And again, if you did 1 and then ranked number 2, as we saw one of those examples where you ranked 2 candidates number 2, well, your number 1 will still count. Your 2 number 2s and your number 3 won't count, but at least your number 1 will still count.
Okay.
Kathy I think she wanted to add something.
Oh, go ahead.
So when you're voting, the Division of Elections person standing by the machine isn't going to be the one telling you that your vote is inaccurate because they're not looking at your vote. It's actually going to be the window on the machine that you're going to want to watch. And that window on the machine will say which section is considered overvoted or spoiled or what have you. Then it is up to you as the voter to decide if you want your ballot returned to you, and you push the button return. If you want to have it cast, you just put cast and say, I understand what it says, but I want to cast that ballot anyway. If you want to get your ballot back because you want to make some changes or you want to look at it, then you would have it returned. But I just want to make it clear that it is the window on the machine that is going to show you if it feels like there is an error message. The Division of Elections worker is not going to be doing that.
And let me offer one other thing, and I should have started out with this. With regard to internal processes to the Division of Elections, there are things I just simply am not able to answer only because I'm not aware. I'm going to give you as much information based on what I do know. So there could be specific ballot handling things that you might have questions about that I just am incapable of answering. I will say that the question had been brought up offline before this presentation. Well, what about mail-in ballots? And if there's an error there? I honestly don't have an answer for that. That'd be something that I would have to ask Division of Elections. I do know that when I vote, because I hate to admit it, live in the municipality of Anchorage, that when I vote with a municipality, I can track my ballot and it can tell me if my ballot was accepted, et cetera. I'm assuming Division of Elections, and maybe Kathy or Representative McCabe, I'm assuming they have that ability to do that, but the closer you get your mail-in ballot to them, close to the election deadline, the less likely that you'll be able to correct your mail-in ballot. And again, I'm suspicioning that. I don't take that as the final word from Division of Elections. That's just what I'm anticipating. Yes, sir.
Yeah. What this is telling me is, if I'm going to be ranked correctly to do it, I'm going to have to vote for 3 Democrats and 1 independent or whatever, because that's what it's going to take for me to get my 1 vote in.
Not exactly sure I know what you mean. I would say my response to any voter would be, don't try to creatively, strategically vote. Don't vote for anyone you don't want to see in office. I will tell you as a...
That means that I would vote one block on all of this, and it would be guaranteed to be processed.
Yeah.
That is correct. So the question is for those watching online, and to reiterate, if I picked one candidate, I don't have to pick a candidate 1 through 4, but if I only picked one candidate, my vote would still go to that candidate.
Correct, but it will go as long as that candidate has not been eliminated from the rounds of voting. So let's say, I'm just going to use hypothetical names. So let's say you're voting for John Smith for governor. I'm using a random name. John Smith for governor. If you vote for him 1, 2, 3, 4, or you vote for him simply 1, your vote will continue to be counted as long as he hasn't been eliminated from consideration. So if you voted for John Smith 1, 2, 3, 4, and in the first round of voting came in number 4, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He ceases to be considered for that office.
Throughout history.
What?
But, you know, trying to put all these other people on the ballot, I think is treasonous.
And again, I'll reiterate, didn't vote for it, don't like it, want to repeal it, but unfortunately, we have to conduct this election this way, this time, and hopefully if, people exercise, well, I gotta be thoughtful, hopefully we will end up with an Alaska state government at the end of November that has the wherewithal to repeal this, and I won't be shy about supporting that.
But to clarify, because I think there's a piece numbers of people have been confused about, is that like in the example ballot we just had, I didn't have to pick Obama, for example.
No.
Or Reagan, for that matter.
No.
Right? I could just pick 2 candidates.
Absolutely.
And it still would have been counted.
Absolutely.
And so you don't actually have to vote for someone you don't want to vote for. So to reiterate what you said,
Correct.
don't fill in a box for someone you don't want in office. Your vote will still count.
And we've got another question back here.
What is the advantage of voting for one person versus all 4 of them in the correct way? How is that advantageous to the person that you're in office? Why it's better?
Well, because then you don't have a vote that helps someone else potentially after that. It's up to you. You certainly can. I will tell you, in without divulging personal politics or anything, I can tell you in the statewide races, out of the 3 statewide races with a lot of competition, there is only one race, I won't tell you which one, I won't tell you what candidate, there's only one race where if I squint, hold my nose, and swallow real hard, I might be able to vote for number 2. But that's just me personally. And part of that's because I've been in politics for most of my life, and I know basically everyone on the ballot and have very distinguished opinions about them. So, but so the Alaskans for Better Election is going to say, they're going to try to pitch it to voters to say, well, so your first choice doesn't get in, but maybe your second choice can. And that's a valid point. But I would also contend, well, what if you're having a hard time even voting for number 1, let alone getting to number 2? And so I do know that there have been people that have asked, and it's not really asked of me per se, but asked in other seminars like this, sort of like, how do I game the system? How do I strategically vote? And I think the answer that I've heard from both, essentially both sides, people that supported ballot measure 2 and people that opposed it, is simply don't vote for anyone you don't want to see in office. And if your number 2 is a very distant number 2, well then you'll have to answer that question for yourself. Do you want to bother? And I can't answer that for you.
Yeah, can I just add that if, and this is Kathy, I would just add that if you have a certain candidate that you are definitely rooting for, I would talk to that candidate and what their specific strategy is for their campaign, especially in these statewide races, a little different in a legislative race because there aren't as many candidates running. But if you do have a preference in one, I would talk to them and find out what is their strategic look forward for their campaign, because it could be different for different campaigns. Again, you pick one and that counts, but maybe because of the number of people involved in a race has more than the two, it has three in it, and maybe there's some concern about the third person ending up getting more of the vote, you might want to rank the other two 1 and 2. And so those are things that are more, getting into the strategy of each campaign, but just a tip that you might want to check with them.
Yeah, I mean, I know, for instance, one statewide candidate, again, not going to say what race or what anything, but their strategy is rank me number 1, period. Not rank me number 1 and then rank this other person number 2. It's rank me number 1, period. Now, I do know that there are some other races where they're saying, rank me number 1, but if you really want to help me rank somebody else, rank this other person number 2. It sort of depends on the electoral math that they're looking at based on, polling. And this is not a campaign seminar. I didn't want it to go there, but again, when you're asking a question like that, and it's a question I've heard, and it's a question I've heard, and I can't determine for you what your priority is with regard to, is it most important to see my number 1 candidate win, or is it more important for me to potentially try to vote strategically so I don't get my absolute worst? And I can't answer that for you.
So I have a question on topic here that was sent in. If you use an absentee ballot and your ballot has an error, how does the Division of Elections contact the voter?
And that goes back to, my point of, I can't answer that question because I just simply don't know. I assume that Division of Elections has a methodology to contact the voter and say, your ballot has been filled out incorrectly. But again, if you mail in your absentee ballot on Monday, October 15th, and the deadline's October 16th, I mean, they can be, as long as they're postmarked, but if you only give the division a day, you're probably not going to be able to have an opportunity to correct your ballot.
Okay,
So that would be a question that I'll be happy to talk to Division of Elections and try to get a specific answer back to you guys.
your recommendation would be absentee, vote early.
What?
Vote early if you're doing an
Vote
absentee
early,
ballot.
and quite honestly, if you want, keep in mind, there's multiple forms of absentee. There's a mail-in absentee, but there's also in-person absentee that you can do as well. I actually voted in-person absentee yesterday at the downtown Division of Elections on Gamble.
Okay.
I have a question just about the ballots itself in your voting. You're looking at me like, please
Okay.
don't. So what if you, if you're looking at your ballot, the front part of your ballot, and you choose not, or you just don't vote in one election, say like the state house election or the state senate election, and you left that completely blank, what happens then?
Well, that's what I did yesterday, and I didn't. If there was an error message, I didn't stick around to see it. Let me put it that way.
And that's what I was getting to. If you leave a section completely blank, I don't believe that you get an error message. So just keep that in mind. So if you just don't vote in one of the sections, the message is not going to come out and tell you you didn't vote. It's assuming you didn't want to.
We don't know that for certain.
But we will check for certain.
I just said that I knew that I voted that way and walked off and didn't pay attention. So that's the way it went because that's the way I intended it.
So I got another question that came in via text here. It was my understanding that if you used an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot, they had to be received on the election day and counted same as the rest of the ballots.
So they have to be postmarked by in the case of the primary, they have to be postmarked by August 16th. They don't necessarily need to be in the hands of the Division of Elections by August 16th, but they have to be postmarked by that date.
Okay.
And with regard to being, they're as long as they're received on time, they're a ballot. They're going to be counted.
Are the military guaranteed to have their ballots in time to be counted?
My understanding is the overseas military absentee ballots, well, not my understanding. I know that they go out in advance of the regular absentee ballot request, and I think they go out something like a month earlier. So they still have to be postmarked by the 16th, but
45 days.
45 days. 45 days prior to the election or 45 days in advance of the other ballots.
Prior to the election.
Right, so I think that is roughly 15 to 30 days in advance of the regular absentee ballots. So, I mean, as far as I can tell, Division of Elections goes to great lengths to try to make sure that the military can submit their ballots, even if they're overseas. And I will just say as an aside, being in the campaign game as well, most campaigns will make an active effort to reach out and send material, et cetera, to the overseas voters. I know we do, even though this isn't about campaigns.
That's what I got so far.
Oh, okay, well,
Questions in the room?
I have another question. I was on the screen that you had where you showed where they didn't get to the second round.
right.
And then the ballots went there. But when they went to the third round.
Let's see if we can roll back. I think, let me see, where is that? Hold on. I think that would have been page 9 of the presentation. Keep going. That one?
Yes,
Okay,
round 3.
okay,
So the bottom person was out
right,
and they had 5 votes.
correct. And so,
The number 2 choice got 4 of those votes.
well, and so if this is an illustration purpose, it's not necessarily guaranteed. They're gonna say, okay, round 1, no one gets to 50% plus 1. Got that, okay. Now we go to round 2. The person who came in 4th then automatically gets eliminated. And what happens is they will take the ballots from number 4, they'll review the ballots and see how many of those have number 2 choices, and then they will allocate those number 2 choices accordingly, based on how the voters voted. And then they'll go to round, and because the ballot measure says that the final tally has to be a majority between 2 candidates, they have to go, and if you have 4 candidates, they have to go to round number 3, and then they'll go through that reallocation process where they'll review the ballots again and go, who was the number 3 choice? And then they will allocate those number 3 votes to their respective candidates until the division gets to one candidate has 50% plus 1 or better. So it's not like your number 1 vote gets reallocated to somebody else. It's, okay, if you voted 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, your candidate that you voted number 1, let's just say for the sake of discussion, that your candidate you ranked number 1 is number 4. That person gets eliminated. But then they'll review the ballots again, and they'll look to see what your second place choice was. And then they'll apply that appropriately to the next candidate. And if
So they don't just stay with first choice?
it goes first, and if there's not a clear choice, there's not a clear 50% plus 1 first round, and they go to 2. That's why they're asking, that's why they're encouraging people to rank essentially all 4, so that they can determine that you have a priority of preference. Now, if you only vote for 1, well, you only vote for 1. And I suspicion that there are going to be more of those more people voting single candidate in most races. That's just personal opinion. I think people are more.
So in this case, that number 4 is the second choice or third choice numbers?
Do what now?
You see how round 3,
Right.
the number 6 got
Right. So what they're saying is that third place choice, whatever, they all went to candidate B. Just because that's how the voters voted. And so once they get to, in this case, 11 votes, so it's 11 to 9, we now have 50% plus 1. Boom, candidate B is the declared winner because they ultimately all the ballots were counted and they exceeded A, which was originally the first place leader. But it's all based on, it's all, not based on, it is all entirely how voters vote. So if you vote 1, 2, 3, 4, your candidate is out the first time, your first choice. Then they'll look at your second choice and they'll apply those accordingly until 2 people have to drop off and they get to a 50% plus 1.
So if we can, for now, because we're broadcasting live,
Okay.
either text in the question or repeat it. Because
all right.
they're only hearing one side of a conversation.
My apologies for those
online.
watching at home. The question was, we're looking at this slide regarding tabulation of votes and the ranked choice and how that impacts how votes are counted. And the question had to do with round 3 and beyond, and the question was asked, trying to understand essentially how did they arrive at those numbers. Is that fundamentally what you're asking? And I was just trying to explain that this is one of the things that's misleading about this slide, and trying to explain that is people don't understand. They're like, oh, are you just assigning these additional votes to this other person? No, it will be based on the actual votes, not based on. It is a calculation of the actual votes cast. And so, again, they'll look, round 1, no clear 50% plus 1, go to round 2. Round 2, number 4 gets dropped off. All of number 4's number 1 votes go away, but they will pull the ballots and they'll recount number 2 votes and they'll assign those as appropriately. And again, like we talked about, if you voted, like, for instance, 1, 3, 4, 3 becomes 2, 4 becomes 3, etc. So this isn't division of elections just arbitrarily assigning people. This is, okay, we didn't get to a clear 50% plus 1 majority with all first place votes. Now we're going to second place votes. Oh, well, we can't get to, under the ballot measure, we can't have a winner with 3 people still in the race. Has to be between 2. And so round 2 is essentially, it has to happen if there are 3 or, no, if there are 4 candidates. So in the case of, for instance, if there were only 3 candidates, round 2 would determine, almost certainly would determine who the winner of that race was. They're saying round 3 and beyond only for the races where there's 4 or more. But again, do you understand that, like, they're not going to assign votes that you didn't give to a candidate.
Right.
You have to rank the candidate in order for that vote to be counted.
So let me ask this question real quick that's kind of on this same topic, and so people online can hear. Do all the ballots get looked at again if it goes to a second round, or just those ballots who had originally voted for the candidate that was eliminated?
It's actually a good question.
No, it's just the ballots for the candidate that got eliminated.
That's right, yeah.
So just the ballots that have the candidate that got eliminated.
Right, so
reviewed
number
again.
4, they'll review number 4's ballots and determine if there are second place, what the second place, what the third place may be.
Okay.
And so at the end of each round, the person that gets dropped off, it's only their ballots that get counted and reviewed for second and third place, et cetera.
Okay, thanks.
What? Yeah.
So you have to think of it this way. Just think of your vote. Don't think of all this global thing. Think of your vote. If your number 1 candidate moves on, your vote stays with him, your number 1 vote. If your number 1 candidate is eliminated, then the computer looks at your ballot and says, who did she pick as number 2? And assigns that vote to the remaining 3 guys. If that number 2 votes get it, and if your number 2 guy stays in the race, then your vote is good, done. But if he gets eliminated too, then the computer looks at your ballot again and says, oh, her number 2 guy got eliminated, now let's look at her number 3 choice. And then it assigns her number 3 choice to whoever is left, and that should be, that's about the end of it. But if you think of this, it gets complicated when you try to think of the whole race. If you just think of your vote and how it's going to matter, it seems to make a difference to people. So,
Got a question in the back there, Pastor.
Question, who determines where, like, the 4th place candidate, where that person's votes go to? Is that determined by the computer, or are there people that actually look at this and determine it?
So does the computer make the determination, or is it eyes on individuals who?
Yeah, my understanding is it will be tabulated by the computer only in the event, unless there, in the event that there is a voting irregularity that the Division of Elections has to do a hand count and person review. But yes, it will be, it's a scanner system. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, that's all I got for questions on my end. Kathy?
I had a quick question.
Oh.
They were asking back here too, and it's just like, so basically you're saying if we just vote for one candidate, put a one next to that one, don't vote on the rest. If they win in the first one, then they go to the second one, they win, but you're gonna throw it out in the third time. We're just trying to keep our votes to count. We don't want number two there, but you're almost saying that we have to have our number two filled in.
And again, I think the answer is,
Because if our candidate doesn't win that first round, she was asking here, can we have 1, 2, 3, 4 on that same one to keep our vote towards that guy?
no, well,
It doesn't make a difference.
it doesn't,
That-
yes, if you're talking about, well, that's bullet voting where you
Yeah.
count John Smith 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can do that. There is no advantage
But he
to
will
either
count.
you or the candidate.
For the candidate, yeah.
There's no particular advantage. Because if they, like, for instance, if they're eliminated, and if they're the first one eliminated, even though you voted for them number 1, 2, 3, and 4, it doesn't matter. They were eliminated numerically. They were the lowest vote getter. So, and that's why I just, to offer my personal perspective, total opinion, like I said, with statewide elections, for me, I'm going to have to really struggle to even get to number 2, because
Yeah.
in all of those races, it goes from, for me, number 1 to number never.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it's always been.
Right.
Is this gonna be the primary one too?
There is one ranked choice race on the primary ballot on August 16th. The question was, will this happen in the primary as well? And I'm just trying to clarify. On August 16th, or you could go vote tomorrow, you will receive a ballot. You will receive a single sheet of paper. There's a primary ballot on the front, and there's the special general ballot on the back. On the back, you will be allowed to rank choice vote. And if you look at the sample ballot, I think, there was a sample ballot, yes. So the sample ballot that you guys have is House District 27. We picked that only because that's where Church on the Rock actually sits, in House District 27. So front side with multiple races, that's your primary. There's your primary. And then on the other side, there is only the race for the special congressional general, which is ranked choice voting. That will determine who represents us in Congress until January of next year. So yes, there will be a ranked choice election on the ballot August 16th.
And then again in November?
Correct.
Yes.
So we're just stuck with this every time we go to vote?
For this year.
Okay, got it.
For this year.
Right. So I would make a recommendation that once you know what district you're in, you probably receive something from the Division of Elections telling you what district you're in, which is also confusing this year because we had redistricting. So people are in new districts. But once you find out what district you are in, and if you haven't been contacted by Division of Elections, you can call and ask them, or you can call any legislator. They can tell you what district you're in. We have access to the Division of Elections voter registration. So feel free to call and find out which district you are in to go, and it can also tell you where you would go vote at. But I would go online to Division of Elections and get a sample ballot for your own district. As he said tonight, we brought the one for this specific address because we felt like that was the right thing to do for here. But I would go online and I would find a sample ballot and I would print it out, and I would probably sit and go through it and maybe make calls to some of the candidates if there's some specific one that you wanted to support, or maybe you already know how you want to vote, but if you were wondering about a strategy, you might find out from their campaign. And I would wrap that up and put it in my pocket and take it with me to the Division of Elections. You can carry that with you and you can take it into the voting booth. You just can't wave it around when you're there. And this time it's not as tough because there's just one ranked choice. And the reason we brought the samples the way they are, because it's exactly the way the ballot is when you go to Division of Elections. It's front and back. And they are supposed to tell you to remember to vote all the way down. You've got your state house candidates and your state senate candidates are way down there at the bottom. And I know a lot of people, once you go through all of those names, you're like, I'm not even going to get there. But they're supposed to tell you to vote the whole ballot. And again, that's up to you. Maybe you don't want to vote something, that's fine. And then turn your ballot over because it is on the back side. So that's something that I just share with you. And I think it'd be helpful if you went on Division of Elections and printed your sample ballot, or you can call any one of your legislators, and I'm sure they would help you with that. Also, I have to make an announcement that Senator Schauer was going to be here this evening to help with this presentation. He is out with his job flying tonight, so I did tell him that I would make that announcement. He is a member of this of the church here, and I just wanted to give him some credit for that as well.
One last question here, and then we can go offline, but stick around and answer questions or interact. What if there's a tie between third and fourth place in the first round?
Oh, yeah. Well, but I think what he's getting at, do both of them drop off, or do neither of them drop off? And I think both of them would drop off. And that's, I'm honestly, I don't know. That's not a question that's been posed before. Very good question. It's not a question that's been posed before, so I don't
Probably
have
from my mom, but I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
I
Well,
can't tell who it is. So. Oh, okay. So potentially they're both dropped, but you don't know for sure?
I don't know for sure.
Okay. All right.
I do know that, like, when you get to the final, if there's only been something that's only happened like twice in the state of Alaska. If you have a tie for 1 and 2, then they actually flip a coin.
Okay.
Straight up. So
Literally flip a coin.
they literally flip a coin.
Wow. Not even a digital coin, like a real coin.
No, it's actually there's the last time it happened was 10, 12 years ago. There's actually a ceremonial coin in the division director's office in Juneau, like the coin that they actually flipped to choose for. It was the State House district that goes out to like the Aleutian chain.
I guess that's better than axe throwing or something like that.
Yeah.
You know.
No,
So-
yeah, it was a guy who ran against his longtime boss, and they got to not just a statistical tie. They hand counted multiple times. It was a tie, and they flipped a coin, and the staff won, and the boss lost.
Awesome.
True story.
Well, I want to say thank you very much. We're going to go offline now, but thank you so much for informing us. This will actually be posted online. People will be able to see it later, get answers to questions.
And like I said, Pastor Jonathan, I'll bundle all of this into one PDF document, and I'll get it to Cheryl, and you guys can distribute it, however, post it, whatever you want to do.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you, guys. Would you give it up for them? Thank you.